My Karen of parents is trying to take my kids away from me since they can't control me anymore. I apologize if I seem heated while typing this. We just got through the longest month for my firstborn. So back in July, my husband, 27 male, got hit by a deer while driving home from work. It took several weeks for them to actually total the car and only pay the loan. In that time, my husband lost his job. I, 24 female, was very pregnant and couldn't work. As well as I was the main caretaker for our children, so we were already stressed. My in-laws weren't able to take us in because they didn't have enough space, so my parents had us stay with them. Longest week ever. Not only were we treated like young kids in school, but as I was very pregnant and my husband a major insomniac. Being told that we cannot, even if we bought the food, be in the kitchen after 9 p.m., nor have food in our room is absolutely ridiculous. I wasn't allowed to parent my son either, nor were we allowed to have my stepsons every weekend, as it was agreed with their mother. So after I jokingly said that I would rather stay with the boys and their mom instead of my parents, the plan was set. We conversed with my in-laws, and let's call her Cora, and basically we would only stay there long enough to get a different apartment once my husband could get the money saved. This was working very well. The children were happy for the most part, and it helped boost the co-parenting bond. This only lasted until the week before I was scheduled to have a cesarean. My stepmother, let's give her the befitting name of Karen, called me non-stop demanding that my son spend Labor Day weekend with them, my last weekend before having my daughter. When I told her no, I was met with she had already contacted a lawyer, and that the children would be removed from the home. She and my father kept saying they have grandparents' rights and should get him every other weekend and every long weekend, but I found that excessive. She was irritated that she couldn't control me by using my son against me anymore. Some backstory might be needed for that part. I was a single mom for roughly 4 years and lived with my parents majority of that time. They were taking my entire paychecks and setting me up for failure. I finally put my foot down when they were saying who I could and could not date. When my husband and I met, we knew we were meant to be, and we married fairly quick. I was also pregnant very quickly. I had a miscarriage right before we got married, and her words to me were, at least it was early on, and did you seriously want this pregnancy anyway? She belittled my feelings, and my father even joined her. It shattered my view of our relationship, which gave me the clarity of the abuse I had been experiencing. Fast forward to right before my daughter was born, we were moving yet again. 3 times in 1 month, 9 months pregnant, mind you. After the threat, we moved into an income-based apartment, and the landlord understood the situation, so she gave us a lot of grace. After discussing it with my husband and in-laws, I made the ultimate decision to cut my parents off. This was hard on my son, but he is very happy with the family he has. Update: there's definitely a lot that they did that I should have put in there as well. Karen is my stepmother and has always treated my younger sibling and I differently than her son. This even showed in our adult lives. I was making $1,200 a paycheck, so $2,400 a month at my job, and I only saw $100 of each check. My stepbrother, who we will call Kyle, paid nothing except for his cars. Yes, his cars. He has 4. 2 of which were gifts. I was forced to get a loan and buy a car off of my parents. I also paid for gas and had to ask permission to buy anything outside of that, meaning I was not allowed to buy anything for my own child, and that was always rubbed in my face. When she said they had a lawyer, my husband immediately called his parents because of our family connections. We knew we were okay no matter what because they didn't have a leg to stand on. But with me so close to having our daughter, we hastened the moving plans, so we literally were only in our new home a couple days before I had her. Due to me not responding to her or my father, she decided to contact my Phil. She complained about how she apologized and never actually had a lawyer, they were just trying to scare me. My Phil was furious with that. It's been 6 months since I spoke to either of them. I gained a wonderful set of parents from my husband, and my son adores them as well as my husband. Karen would always correct my son when he would call my husband dad instead of his name, which was absolutely wrong of her to do. He didn't have a father figure until I met my husband, and he idolizes him, so hearing her correct him made my blood boil. She also knows of our poor financial situation since the loss of our car, so she stalked us to find out where we moved, and proceeded to leave things at our house. I am considering a restraining order, or at least a no-contact order. I worry more about my children's mental health than my own, so sometimes I worry I'm doing the wrong thing by keeping my father away, but he has always chosen his wife over my sibling and I. We are both no contact because of this behavior, and our relationship is better than ever. I feel that I have definitely done the right thing, and while we are struggling financially, we are at least happy. Update 2. My son has definitely had a hard time, but my in-laws, bonus boys plus their mom and his teachers have been amazing in regard to helping him through all of it. Christmas and his 5th birthday were very difficult, especially being within a month of each other. He was very upset, but also understanding that my parents were not around anymore. We are very open with him and explain things in a child-friendly way, so he understands that despite this decision seeming mean, it actually is helping our family actually blossom. He occasionally gets upset, especially when things he normally would do with them come up. I love my son with all my heart, and I hate when he's sad, but I also know how bad my mental state was when they were in the picture. They live half an hour away from us and refused to drive when they wanted to see him. Not me or his stepbrothers, just him. When they did see him, they would shower him with gifts and not his brothers. The same thing Karen would get upset about with my grandfather, who had basically raised me so my dad could work, did when she and my dad first got together. When we moved in with her, my grandfather tried to be very accommodating and accepting of my stepbrother, who is already very much spoiled. Pawpaw, as we called him, had my sibling and I living with him since we were very small children, and us being moved out of his house was very hard on him. He had a stroke not too longer after my dad married Karen, and that's when shit hit the fan. Karen decided that Pawpaw didn't treat Kyle the same as sibling and I, so she messaged him a very rude message. This man doted on her, mind you. We are a very southern Texan family and she is what we considered a Yankee. He would shower her with gifts, very expensive ones at that. Only to have his grandchildren ripped away from him and a few months later end up in the hospital. We were then moved states away. I didn't see Pawpaw for many years and only got to see him once before he passed away when I was pregnant. I wasn't allowed to take bereavement unlike my sibling and Kyle. I was an adult who needed to get over it. I was 19 and high risk with my pregnancy. Pawpaw knew that she was fake, and that she would do anything to make herself or her son the victim. He tried to warn my dad, but he was already too deep. I wish my dad would have listened, but then again, I would have never had my children or met my husband. Another thing about Karen is no matter how traumatic a situation, something worse has happened to her. For example, it took me years after my son was born to tell her that the only reason I knew he was my ex's kid was because of his skin color. I had been SA'd by a man while my roommate at the time decided to do some not legal things in the bathroom of the apartment we were being paid to clean. Karen decided to say, "Oh, that's nothing. I was SA'd by a relative when I was little." She belittled me for my miscarriage and would constantly tell me that I shouldn't have gotten pregnant again anyways. She was not fond of my husband because he was very ready to help me out of the situation I was in living with them. Back then it was easy to ignore the shitty behavior because I wanted my dad to be in my son's life still. I wish I would have cut them off so much sooner. I don't think my dad even has balls anymore. I'm fairly certain they were turned into a matching coin purse to her Louis Vuitton bag that she's so proud of.